So welcome to the second episode of creating a blog using Laravel series. So where we left off, okay, we ended by creating a new Laravel project and we created a domain for it. Okay, so well now in this episode, what we are going to do is we are going to walk through the structure of the Laravel framework so we get a little bit familiarized with it. Then we can proceed to work our way around it. Okay, so what we can do now is just to open the project with any text editor. So you can use Sublime Text, Visual Studio Code, or PHP Storm. I personally prefer PHP Storm than any of the editors, but you can go with anyone that you wish. Okay, but for this series or this episode, I'll be working with Visual Studio Code, and as we move along, I'll be changing the IDs or the text editors so that you can see which one best suits your purpose. Okay, so for Visual Studio Code, I'm just going to navigate inside, okay, inside the main project, and I'm just going to hit code dot and hit enter, and it's going to open the project in my Visual Studio Code. Okay, so now basically this is the entire Laravel project structure. Okay, now we have the app here. Now this app is, we are going to be using this mostly in our project. Okay, now this app stores a couple of things. Uh, Now it stores the console. We have a console directory here, okay, which contains the kernel. This is some advanced stuff, so I encourage you, advise you not to touch it, but you can also search more on it. And this also has an exception folder. So here's where all your exception handling, okay, let's say if your model is not found, maybe if the route fails and all that, you can create a new exception to handle them here. This is also quite a little bit of advanced stuff, which I'll be teaching in the further videos. Okay, now here is one of the things that you have to take note of: the HTTP. Now inside the HTTP folder, so Laravel, okay, Laravel is an MVC framework. So MVC stands for the model, view, and controller. So it uses an MVC pattern. All right. So now the model handles the database or contains every entity or every detail talking about the database and like the columns and the rows and all that. Okay. And um, and the view is what you see on the screen. So for example, this is the view that we have here, okay? And what talks to the or what communicates to the database would be our model. And finally, we have the controller. So the controller is basically like is basically in the middle of the model and the view. I don't know why they put it at the last, but it's actually in between the model and the view. So when you want to display something to the screen, okay, it goes through the controller and you can output it to the screen. For example, if you take a user input and you want to save it inside the database, from the view, it has to hit the controller. Then you can insert it into the database using the model. Okay, or you can do it right from the controller as well. But the model um, contains the database schemas, the structure, and the relationships. Okay, so the controller does all the heavy lifting for you, and your view just quickly gives you the access to view to show your HTML or whatever design that you want to show on the screen. Okay, so this basically is where you can locate your controller. So inside your app, you go to HTTP and you're going to see controllers. Okay, so this is the base controller that we are going to be extending most of our all our controllers from. Okay, so you see that in a while. Now we have the middleware. Now the middleware is also like um it also helps with the security measures of your Laravel application. So we would come to the middleware sooner or later. which I think in my 4 or 5 video we will talk about briefly on the middleware. But for now, let's just leave the middleware part for now. Okay, let's understand that we have to handle our controllers inside this folder. Okay, now providers, these are also some files that you don't want to touch for now. Okay, so let's also leave this behind. Okay, so now our models are created directly under our app directory. Okay, so we have only one model here, that's the user. Okay, so this basically handling everything about the user. So these are the columns that will be in the user database table. Okay, yeah, these are also some columns that will be inside the database table. Okay, for the users table, but these are some hidden things and all this. So okay, so all these are basically columns in the database table. So the model, what the model does is it handles the database schemas and all that for us. Okay, so that can be located directly under the app. So I don't know why, but you can create a separate folder called models and handle whatever you want to do. Now the bootstrap here, you do not want to touch it to. Later when we are hosting our projects and all that, I will teach you some basics. Okay, but basically this also contains the cache. So so along the project you might be doing some clearing of caches and all that. So you basically understand that. So we also have our config folder. So this config folder stores most of our it stores most of the dependencies, okay, that our system is already having. So it handles basically majority of the dependencies that we got for free when we installed Laravel. Okay, so we can use their mailing system to set up some configurations. Okay, we have the database. Okay, that also gives us some information about the database and the driver you want to go with. Okay, and a couple lot of things here, the auth here. Okay, we'll be talking about this briefly. All right, so this also helps us to do that. And now we also have the database folder. Now this database directory is where you're going to find 3 things. So the factory, okay, migration and seeding. So this factory and seeding work hand in hand. Okay, we will come back to that. So these are for creating fake data. Let's say you don't want to you randomly want to create some data to use, okay, without having to hard code or manually put them inside your database. You can use the factory and the seed to generate random data for you. Okay, and the migration, now this is where all our database files are going to be. Okay, so whenever we create or want to create a new schema for our database table, okay, we are going to locate it under databases migration. Okay, and you can see this is creating a users table, and these are the columns that we are given. We are going to talk about this along the way. Okay, so yeah, don't worry. Now the public folder, okay, this is where I like to, or mostly you have to put your CSS and your JavaScript files, okay, inside here. All right, so this is also where you keep your assets, your images and all that, okay, here inside the public. Now we also have the resources. Now the resources, assuming you want to, let's say you would want to add React or Vue components, you can keep them here. All right, and it also have another directory under resources, which is also a very important, called the views. So remember we talked about MVC. Yes, so this is where the views are being kept. So we have the views directory where all your screens are going to be, where you want to show your view, okay, to the screen. So for example, we have the welcome view. So this is what is showing here. So when we change, let's see, we can change the Laravel. So let's change this uh to YouTube blog. Okay, and let's save and let's refresh. Okay, so you can see it has changed. So that is where we are going to be storing all our views, okay, under this directory. So this is also important, very, very important to take note of. And also we have what we call the route. Now the route, we are going to be handling two main things here. That's the API route. So this is actually a route that manages all your API. Okay, so whenever you have something like um slash API slash users, is going to call that route. Okay, so yes, so basically that's what is going to happen. Okay, so whenever you want to call an API route, you use this to do that. So we'll be using this along the way. Okay, so the most important thing here to learn also is the web.api. Now with the web.api, here is where um all your routing is going to be for your website or your blog or your web application. So for example, you can see this is the verb, the get verb that we are using here. So assuming we are having a want to use a post request, we put post here. Okay, we can put delete also here and delete as well. Okay, so this will be looking at this into detail when we start. Okay, so we can easily also create something, for example, like this, and let's call it hey. Okay, or let's call it hey. And now what we are going to do is let's just echo something on the screen. Okay, using this one and say hey there. Okay, and let's save it. Now whenever we go to slash hey, okay, it's supposed to give us what we typed. So you can see it's showing us hey there. So this is where all our routing is going to be. So we have to pass our controller and it will handle our request for us. Okay, so we'll be looking at this in a couple of minutes. Yeah, and also we have the storage where you can actually change where you want to store your images and other things. You can actually put them here. Okay, but I mostly do the public, right? And this also test where you can write test units for your application. So a code writing code to test your code. Okay, this is also a little advanced stuff that I'll be taking you through later. Okay, then we have the vendor. Here's where all your packages or your dependencies, all the libraries that were installed, okay, or you install, will be shown inside the vendor folder here. Okay, and this is the .env is where our database connection and other connections or other setups are being done. So the .env is actually our environment file. So this is where we want to store some secret codes and all that, because whenever you are pushing to the server, this will be exempted. So it's always safe to have all your environment files here. Okay, so for example, you can set up your database connection, okay, your port, the database name, root, password. So we'll be doing this when we start connecting to the database. And this is also one for setting up your email, okay, Amazon, if you want to connect your app to Amazon, you know that. All right, and basically, yeah, that's also the last thing I want to talk about is the composer.json. Now, this is also very important. So, whenever you install a new library, okay, it's going to show up here in here. So, whenever you also want to add a new library, you can simply copy, okay, and paste it here, and it's also going to take effect. All right. So basically, that's it for this lesson. And uh yeah, and I hope you liked it. And if there is any question at all, please feel free to leave the question below the comment section, and I'll have a look at it, and I would surely reply your comment, okay, or help you if need be. So thank you so much for watching, and in the next episode we are actually going to start with the UI development before we dive deep into the coding. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.